Ghostbusters Afterlife is the long-awaited sequel to Ghostbusters 2. Released in 2021, Afterlife picks up 22 years after Ghostbusters 2 and introduces the new generation of Ghostbusters, Egon Spengler's daughter and grandchildren. The original cast makes an appearance and has a touching tribute to the late Harold Ramis, who portrays Egon Spengler in the original films. So like we did with Ghostbusters 2, we're just going to take a couple minutes each and give our thoughts on Afterlife, or Ghostbusters 3 if you want to call it that, and just kind of see where everybody sits on this one and whether you should watch it. If you've seen it, would you go back and see it again? And let's just kind of jump right into this. Doug, you go first on this one.
Right on. All right, so this is a 30-year sequel that works. So this one, it was a new twist on a great story that worked. It went darker than Ghostbusters 1. Not saying it was bad or evil or, anything like that, but it was a little creepier. There were a few more jump scares that, and a few more tense moments. They're walking through Ivo Shandor's caves or whatever, just it was what the last part of the original Ghostbusters was, but through the entire movie. Right around when Ghostbusters 1, when Magic hit, the music, I believe in Magic, that movie got a little bit darker and it got creepier. And, there's a point where you thought the Ghostbusters might have died a couple times. You knew they weren't going to, but they portrayed that in the movie. This whole movie was like that. They picked the perfect granddaughter. McKenna Grace is one of my favorite actresses, and she's 16 years old, all going all the way back to when, she was in that Chris Evans movie. I can't think of the name of it, where she played the genius. I mean, she was amazing at that. And she was like 6 years old. So bringing in the kid from Stranger Things, that was great. They gave him, he's popular right now. That worked out. They brought in the evil chick from Avengers to round things off with Paul Rudd, of course, saying that the mother was actually, I can't remember the bad person's name, but she was the female evil henchman of Thanos in Endgame and the other one. So anyway, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I didn't want to go too deep into spoilers because it is kind of a fairly new movie. You should definitely check it out. But yeah, I don't want to go too deep into things. I'll let the guys hit the other things. What do you think? I mean, do you agree with that? Did you feel the movie was a little darker?
More suspense, I think.
Yeah, I think it had the same vibe as the first one, really. I mean, even right down to the music, the little Ghostbusters piano theme that they play. And I think they did a really good job of capturing the feeling of the first one. And it had several callbacks to the original film. I thought it did it justice. And, when you're waiting a long time for a sequel, because you keep hearing like, hey, we're going to do a part 3, and then it didn't work out. And then we're doing a part 3 and it didn't work out. And then they tried to remake it, and that definitely didn't work out. So I was nervous about going in to see this movie. And I walked out of there. I saw it with Doug, and I mean, we walked out just absolutely elated. And we took my daughter to see it too. My daughter was there. It was me, and it was Doug and another friend of ours. And Cece, I remember her saying at that one point, I looked up and I looked over at you, and then I looked at Uncle Doug, and like everyone's crying. I was like, yeah, I mean, that ending to that film, I mean, it hit me. And I'll get into that a little bit here, but yeah, great.
And a real quick comment on one point you made. You said they made some throwbacks to the original film. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just that. And that was what was great. It wasn't, let's just tell every joke from part 1 and put it in this one. No, they made a couple comments that were perfect. They even had a couple deeper ones where it's just like, if you hadn't seen the movie 20 times, you may not have caught it.
Right.
So, that made it better on that.
Yeah. It was enough fan service without shoving it in your face.
100%.
So, Nathan, let's hear your thoughts.
I like my movies a little bit slower pace with more suspense. I loved the Daredevil Netflix series, for instance. So the pace of this film might be too slow for some people, but it's exactly what I wanted out of a modern Ghostbusters film. interesting bit of trivia. They actually corrected a mistake in Ghostbusters 1. When Ray quotes Revelation 7:12, what he says is actually Revelation 6:12, where it talks about the full moon becoming like blood, and they opened the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, the sun became black as sackcloth, and the moon became like blood. That's actually Revelation 6:12. So this film picks up that same storyline and makes it bigger, which I thought was an interesting distinction. Now, when we go to Egon's farm at the beginning, there are signs posted with a paraphrase of that verse on it. And then they paraphrased it a little bit incorrectly. It says the stars of the sky fell, but they changed it to the skies fell on the sign because, you got to pack you can only pack so many words on a small sign. But that is interesting because the term stars actually referred to fallen angels in the Old Testament. So that would have been so cool to see, demons falling from the sky in this movie. But instead, they went with something different, which was kind of the demons trying to bring the other side into our world, which is kind of the end of Revelation. So you're combining the spiritual world and the physical world like things were in the Garden of Eden, only the demons trying to do that before God judges evil. So the demons are still a threat to people, which is really spooky. So I always liked that plot, and I think they retold that well in this film. I thought it was the sequel I was wanting to Ghostbusters 1.
Yeah, I think it was interesting that they chose to bring back Gozer. Yeah, I thought that, what would be the villain here, but it turns out that it's Gozer again, pulling the same thing. She needs her two humans that she can turn into dogs so that they can reproduce or come together as one. And it was kind of neat to see Evo Shandor this time too, who's only basically in for 5 seconds.
That. But that's the thing. They hired J.K. Simmons to come in to play Evo Shandor. And he literally lays there in a coma, and then he stands up, and I don't even know if he had a line.
I think he had one line.
One line, and then
I didn't know that was him.
Yeah, that was J.K. Simmons playing Evo Shandor. Wow. And then they brought back Gozer as well, and that was portrayed by Olivia Wilde, which is kind of cool because she's obviously a famous actress too. So they brought in some famous people to play these famous parts from part 1, which was amazing. They just weren't in it very much. I'd love to see a director's cut, see if they might have done some more with them. I'm not sure, but yeah, I at first I was like, oh, we're doing Gozer again. Why can't we do something new? But they pulled it off pretty well. I'm not mad at it. I enjoyed seeing Gozer again, and the whole throwback to "Are you a god?" And they'll look at Ray, and I think Bill's like, "You know what to do," or something like that. It was hilarious. So yeah, the throwbacks were perfect. They weren't over the top, and the new people were fun.
I did want to mention an Easter egg too. That Revelation 6:12 is tattooed on the left forearm of Ray when he answers the phone call from Phoebe.
Oh, really?
In his store. It's tattooed on his forearm. So then you actually know that Ray does actually know where that verse came from in the first. Yeah.
Catch. I didn't notice that.
Good catch.
He just said it wrong in the first film, but it's right there on his forearm.
Really? I'll have to check that out next time.
Oh, that would be a good throwback if they go back to that line again. Or you remember what Revelation 6:12 says.
Oh, that would be so funny. Perfect.
Anyway, I guess we're up to Drew.
Okay. Here's my 2 cents. Yeah, I was extremely excited to see this, but I was also very nervous on how it was going to be done. Seeing the cast, Paul Rudd is always funny. The cast looked great. I was really excited to see the original guys come back and curious on how they were going to handle the character of Egon. And I've mentioned this before. Egon is my favorite. He's my favorite Ghostbuster. I love his sense of humor. I love how dry and serious he is all the time. I think it's absolutely hilarious. So it's interesting to see him at the very beginning. And of course, Harold Ramis has passed away years before this was made. So it's like, are they going to do this with some stand-in? Are they going to do this with really bad CG? How is this going to work out? So, we get to the part at the end when they're battling Gozer and they set all the traps at the house. And his granddaughter picks up the stick and she's fighting and she's holding on for everything she's got. And then you see this hand come around the corner and grab the gun. And at that point I went, oh no, there's no way they're doing this. And that camera pans around and it's Egon. I lost it. Like, I could not control it at that point. I'm starting to cry, and he's sitting there holding it, and then the other 3 guys are using it, and they're looking over at him like, there he is. And I thought it was an awesome ending. I thought it was a beautiful tribute to Harold Ramis, and just a kind of a nice way to say goodbye to him. Yeah, I thought it was beautiful. It was absolutely amazing. So I think that's what really hits me with Ghostbusters Afterlife. That was my favorite part. And I mean, I can still get a little choked up when I watch it now. The only thing I wish they would have done is explain when Egon had a daughter.
Yeah.
Like
that is one thing they've missed, because they kind of threw us for a loop, because in Ghostbusters 1, Egon and Janine kind of had a thing going.
Yeah.
You could, tell, I don't want you to die, and, all of that. And then in Ghostbusters 2, nothing was explained. And then all of a sudden she's hooking up with Lewis.
Yep.
And then she shows up in Afterlife, and it's like, who are you with today?
Right.
Are you with anyone? So it's obviously not Janine.
No.
Is that who that was in the first post-credit scene? Because it didn't look like her, but she talked like Janine.
Yeah, it was Annie Potts.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they brought her back for that.
Well, I tried to do the math on this. The actress who plays Mom, Carrie Coon, is just a few years younger than me. So I don't know how old she's supposed to be in the movie. But let's just say she's my age. She's 2 years younger than I am. Her oldest son at this time is what, 16?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm trying to figure out, when was she born? If she was born after the events of part 2, that puts her born in 1990. So she's not old enough for this character. If she was born before the events of part 1, that would make her the proper age, but they never mentioned anything about Egon. So it was like, was Egon married at one point, had a child, and then moved to New York City, and that's where it was? That's what I'm assuming. But I really wish they would have said at one point when Egon had a daughter and have
Maybe
kids.
that's coming in part 3.
Maybe. I hope so.
I guess that'd be 5.
We would need part 5. I mean, I hope so, because I would love to know what's that story there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I gotta say, I actually watched Afterlife after I watched its sequel, Frozen Empire. And Frozen Empire, I thought was decent, but when I watched Afterlife, I thought, oh, this is what I was hoping for. It was the pace I was hoping for, and the character development that I felt like is missing from Frozen Empire. So I think Afterlife is worth the watch. And I wonder if I would see Frozen Empire in a different light if I'd watched Afterlife first, because then I would have the character development that you have to carry into Frozen Empire. Because Empire fails to develop the characters the way that Afterlife does, I think.
Well, they were introducing the characters at the same time too. So
they expand Phoebe's lore, but it's just not as deep as what I was hoping. But Afterlife is.
Yeah. Well, they're 2 totally different movies too,
and different styles.
It's very similar to almost the evolution of Lethal Weapon, because the first one was dark. Briggs was, contemplating suicide. He, just lost his wife, all this stuff. And then part 2, they start joking around a little bit more, and Riggs has a love life. And then part 3, they bring in Joe Pesci, and, it's just joke. Still really good, but it's a completely different movie. Part 3 compared to part 1, it's just 2 different styles of movies, which I don't have an issue with by any means. I'm not complaining. That's great. You give us 2 different styles or 2 different things to do or whatever. So yeah, it was just, they're 2 different movies with 2 different styles, but both done very well, I thought.
Yeah. And you have Jason Reitman doing it. I mean, the son of Ivan Reitman. who is the original director.
Mm-hmm.
So you know it's in good hands. It's somebody who knows the story, knows the franchise. He's working with Dan Aykroyd, who created this franchise. I mean, Dan Aykroyd was an original writer. So yeah, it's just, I think it was as close to the original as it could have been, but obviously more modern. But they still had the same feel. You still had the same emotions and everything. So very well done.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I think that's a recommend from all of us.
I think so.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Will the next entry in the Ghostbusters franchise go the Ghostbusters 2 route, a slight step backwards, or will it be a worthy sequel? Watch this video next.